Hi, and welcome to another Shane Plays video on Dungeons and Dragons. Thanks so much for watching. Today we're going to be talking about just a ton of really big news for Dungeons and Dragons, but really kind of as what the community can do with Dungeons and Dragons. Um, and it's big. It takes a lot of took a lot of time for me to sort through all the information and reference what other people were sorting through, but this is big stuff. So hope you enjoy the video. First of all, D&D has been very busy over the past week or so. Some of it we're going to talk about in this video, some of it we're not. But just to kind of give an idea of what's going on, first of all, they've done the Dungeon Masters Guild, which don't worry, this video is going to explain this. They've also done a open gaming license and system reference document for 5th edition. Once again, that's big. It's kind of real big. And again, we'll go into that. There's been some changes to the Adventurers League, and they announced, 2 days ago, Curse of Strahd, which is going to be the new campaign coming out March 15th that harkens us back to the beloved Ravenloft setting. So, which has always been a very, very popular setting. And of course, Strahd is the vampire, the sort of Dracula type tragic figure that rules over the domain. So, looking forward to that. What we're going to be talking about in this video is the Dungeon Masters Guild and the OGL and SRD, the Open Gaming License System Reference Document. We'll talk a little bit about the Adventurers League changes. We're not going to go into Curse of Strahd. That really is going to deserve its own video and blog posts and all that. We'll talk a little bit about Adventurers League changes, but once again, I'm not going to go super deep into that because there's a lot going on there. And there's a lot to cover with the Dungeon Masters Guild and the OGL and the SRD. So I will probably follow up with a couple more blog posts and videos on the Adventurers League and Curse of Strahd. Definitely Curse of Strahd, probably Adventurers League. So that's kind of what we're going to be covering today. And make sure in the comments, or not the comments, the description for the video, there'll be some links that were helpful to me in pulling all this information together. I'll cover them here in a second, but you can look in the description on the video. If anybody else has, hey, you should go check this out too, make sure to leave that in the comments. I will almost certainly do a companion blog post for this video. And in that case, I'll also link to that blog post in the description, either when the video goes out or in a later update. Of course, I'll link the blog post back to the video. So, and what I'll be linking to immediately are some links I found helpful. One is what is the DM's Guild, which is on the Dungeon Masters Guild website. That'll be in the description. There's a D&D podcast they did on January 14th that was talking about the OGL and the Dungeon Masters Guide, or not guide, the Guild, from Mike Mearls and some other folks, and that was very, very helpful. Who was it that was in that podcast? Hold on a second. It was Mike Mearls. It was Chris. Is it Chris Taylor? Chris Lindsay, Greg Tito, and Shelley Moo were in that, and that was a really good podcast. I encourage you to go listen if you want to know more about this stuff. There was a Reddit AMA. A D&D AMA on Friday, and that had a ton of information. You had to kind of sort through it, but there's a ton of information on there. And speaking of sorting through it, Morris over at ENWorld did a post. There's a million answers from Mearls and Lindsay about DM's Guild, DDAL, which is the Adventurers League, and the OGL. So he kind of compiled some stuff from the AMA into a post. It's very helpful. I recommend you check that out. And Trevor from D&D Wizards of the Coast was also part of that AMA. So anyway, and Trevor's a cool dude, so I want to make sure to give him a shout out. So how do we understand this? Let's dig in. Here's kind of the Rosetta Stone, the key to understanding this. This is what I really had to kind of bring together for me to start getting it. You gotta understand this. The DM's Guild is not the OGL and SRD. And the OGL and SRD are not the DM's Guild. Okay, you got to just separate them. Okay, once you get that, it's your first major important step to unlocking what all this is. Okay, so again, just so I don't confuse anybody, the OGL is the Open Gaming License, and the SRD is the System Reference Document. Okay, I'll explain what that means here in a second, but I'm just going to start referring to the OGL and the SRD from this point forward. Okay, so what is the Dungeon Masters Guild? What is the DMs Guild? Per the website, the DMs Guild website, the Dungeon Masters Guild is a new program that allows you to create content, you know, adventures, monsters, backgrounds, and etc., using Wizards of the Coast intellectual property (IP), and to make some money while you're at it. Some money, not just some money. In other words, publish through Wizards of the Coast using their copyrighted content, characters, and that sort of thing. Pretty cool. All right, I think that's very cool. And it's in a revenue sharing model. So you get 50%, and Wizards of the Coast and One Bookshelf, you know, Drive Through RPG, all those guys, them and Wizards of the Coast split 50%, and then you get 50%. So revenue sharing. The system reference document, the SRD, on the other hand, contains guidelines for publishing role-playing game content under the Open Gaming License. Okay, so the OGL is the license that lets you do it, and the SRD is the document that you refer to see what you're allowed to have access to. Okay, and I'll explain more about that. And it doesn't use Wizards of the Coast intellectual property. Okay, you also do not publish through their site in a revenue sharing model. Okay, and there's a chart on, and I'll link this too on the description for the video. There's a chart. It's like a bunch of X's. It shows, and I may try to edit that into the video so you can see it here. But it's kind of like it's two columns. It kind of shows the OGL, and then it shows the DMs Guild, and it says, well, what if I want to do this? What if I want to do this? And there's X's, you know, in the relevant column that lets you know. So that's kind of helpful. I'll put that link in there too, and like I said, I'll try to edit that into the video. So you got that? All right. So let's go over it again. If you want to create adventures, classes, feats, etc., using Wizards of the Coast intellectual property, you can do that in the DMs Guild in a 50-50 revenue sharing agreement. You can play directly in D&D's intellectual property playground and make money while you're doing it. Okay? If you want to self-publish content using the basic 5th edition engine, but not a lot of extras such as subclasses and feats and all that, as well as be responsible for all of the publishing, okay, hard copy, digital, whatever, but you get all the rewards, then the OGL and SRD is for you. So, as the D&D podcast put it last Thursday, if you want to start your own publishing company, the OGL is for you. If you want push button D&D publishing, the DM's guide is for you. So, and I will give some examples and notes later to kind of help clarify this. We'll give plenty of examples to kind of help clarify what the difference is here. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the Adventurers League, and then we're going to talk nothing but DM's Guild and OGL. Okay, the Adventurers League, there's some pretty big changes, but the main biggie for the Adventurers League is that sessions can now be held anywhere. Okay, your home, the library, the laundromat, whatever. In addition to your friendly local game store, where previously they could only be held, Adventurers League sessions could only be held at your friendly local game store. All right. I'm kind of understanding there's going to be some store exclusive content, but not the entire program. So there will be throughout the year a few things that are exclusive to stores, if I'm understanding correctly. But for the most part, the league itself is now is open. You can play it wherever you want. You don't have to play it at a store. Now, I've seen some grumbling along the lines of volunteers are now having to pay to support the program. I think what they're saying is if you're a DM in the DMs Guild, before you just showed up at the store and the store bought the stuff and then you ran it on behalf of the store, if I'm understanding this correctly. I haven't done a lot of Adventurers League stuff. I do run a game at a local game store once a week, but it was on Tuesday nights, not Wednesday, and I guess there was something about it had to be Wednesdays. I don't know the whole deal. But the store does record it as casual play. But anyway, I've seen some grumbling there. I need to learn more about what the whole scope of it is. I have a feeling that the Adventurers League announcement is going to be one of those kind of mixed bags where some people are very happy about it and some people are kind of upset about it. So I want to research a little bit more on that. If you know more, please leave it in the comments on the video. And, I'd love to know more as I research it myself. But anyway, since the DMs Guild and 5th edition OGL is a pretty large topic, I'm not going to go any more on the Adventurers League with this. But like I said, I'll try to do a follow-up video at some point, maybe a post on it. So let's move on to the DMs Guild and the OGL. So I've got a lot of stuff here between listening to the podcast and kind of reading around and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna kind of go through and give some notes from the podcast first, and then from the Ask Me Anything, the AMA on Reddit. So first, let's look at the DMs Guild. Okay. And here's from the podcast, and then I'll read some stuff that I pulled out of the AMA that I thought was interesting. Okay, so from the podcast, they mentioned that this whole big deal is Chris Lindsay's baby. I don't know if it's Lindsay or Lindsay. I'm going to say Lindsay. He's been working on it for a while. He said he had documents dating back to 2010. So this didn't happen overnight. This has been happening in the works for a long time. Okay, so the Dungeon Masters Guild, again, is a way for fans to be directly involved with D&D and also sell their own content. Okay, D&D has always been about fan content. This also allows push-button publishing and a review system for feedback to improve as a designer. And it's been mentioned several times in the AMA, I think on Twitter, in the podcast. Wizards of the Coast is going to be looking for hot new talent through the DMs Guild. So if you're like, how do I get published by Wizards of the Coast? How do I get hired by Wizards? The DMs Guild's probably your best way from this point forward. If you put good stuff on the DMs Guild, they're going to notice. They're going to have people looking. They're going to have people looking here. So not only can you make some money, 50-50 revenue sharing, but you can possibly, potentially be noticed by Wizards of the Coast, and maybe either they'll buy your stuff, or maybe freelance, or maybe they'll hire you. I don't know. But they've said over and over, we're going to be looking here for new talent. Okay, boom. You want to be the next Chris Perkins? Then this is probably your best avenue for getting noticed. Not saying that other ways won't get you noticed, but this is probably this is like the official submission system at this point moving forward, best I can tell. So another thing that's big about this is it allows access to material previously unavailable due to copyright law. Right now, if you want to do stuff in the Forgotten Realms, you can. The DMs Guild allows you to officially create content, feats, classes, subclasses, adventures, whatever, resource books, whatever, for the Forgotten Realms officially. And that's cool. Now, keep in mind that also means whatever you throw up there becomes fair game for other people. That doesn't mean they can just steal everything you did and, copy and make money off of it. But that does mean if you're adding to what the Forgotten Realms is, then other people, that's fair game for other people. Whatever everybody's contributing to the intellectual property now. So there's 5 featured categories of content. For example, you have the background check for backgrounds, right? Making new backgrounds. Monstrous Compendium for monsters, and side treks for shorter adventures. And they said they're really looking for like shorter one evening adventures. So one moment, my cat. I kicked him out earlier, but he wants back in. So also, I can't stress this enough. I have another note here. Wizards of the Coast will be looking for new creators through DMs Guild content. And also the Wizards of the Coast team, the D&D team, is still responsible for and the gatekeeper of canon. Okay, so they have the final say. If somebody puts up something up there that they don't feel it deserves to be canon or Forgotten Realms, they could have a say in that. But it doesn't sound like they're running around looking to squash people's ideas. But there's like, hey, we're still the gatekeeper. All right. So, and here's the resources that are currently fair game for the DMs Guild. Okay, remember, we're not talking about the open gaming license. We're talking about the DMs Guild. All right. The core rule books. So that would mean Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual. All right, the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, which is the SCAG, which is recent released, which is really cool. And then Out of the Abyss, all right, which is the Rage of Demons adventure, campaign adventure. Those things are fair game now. If it's published in that stuff, it's fair game for the DM's Guild. The intellectual property as well as the rules. And the different rules are not intellectual property. Evidently, you can't copyright a game engine. But you can copyright all the, like, Dritz Doerden and Beholders and, Forgotten Realms and all that stuff. That's intellectual property, okay? The creative side of it. Now, they did specifically say novels are not included. So all of the, hold on, cat, get in or out, dude. He didn't come in, so this is going to be any of you that have cats can feel my pain on this one. So the novels are not part of it. There's a big asterisk note on that. No, so all that stuff, if it's in a Salvatore novel, that doesn't necessarily mean it's fair game. So core rulebooks, the SCAG, and Out of the Abyss. That's what's currently fair game, but they did say they're going to keep adding as they go on. So they made that said this skips the gatekeeper of a process like submitting to Dragon Magazine. Just throw it out there and let the community be your gatekeeper. Okay, it's a meritocracy. It's either going to rise or fall on its own merits. Now, Adventurers League content. Okay, I'm not talking about the Adventurers League program and where you can play it and how it's done. I'm talking about the content for the Adventurers League. That will not be open to everyone. Okay, so not just everybody can create Adventurers League content. That's still going to be curated, and Adventurers League contributors will be recruited out of Dungeon Masters Guild submissions. All right. So again, if you want to get noticed by Wizards of the Coast, D&D, this is your best bet. As I mentioned before, Adventurers League is now playable anywhere at home, at the library, at the store, etc. Okay, the DM's Guild. This is a really important point. It's going to be digital/PDF only for the foreseeable future. Okay, no hard copies and no print on demand. So you can't be like, I want a hard copy of that adventure, book, and pay extra, and it doesn't work that way. It's just digital PDF only. Okay, and then there was kind of a funny. I don't know if it was an ironic question or if they were serious, but I think Shelley Moo asked, can Wizards of the Coast employees submit content to the DM's Guild? And it was like, there's no answer for that yet. That's an open question. So, and then the age restrictions. This is an important clarification. Who can submit to the DM's Guild? It's based on existing laws on who can legally sign a contract. So they're not adding to or removing. If where you live at your age, you can enter into a contract, you can submit to the DM's Guild. So that's the podcast versions of the DM's Guild. Now I'm going to go through and highlight some stuff from the AMA. And then when I get done with that, I'm going to come back and we'll talk about the open gaming license and the SRD. Okay, so don't forget that's still to come in this video. Right now we're just talking about the DM's Guild. As I said, there's a lot of content to go through to understand here. So, let's see. Okay. Here's Chris Taylor, Lindsay. I don't know why I want to keep saying Chris Taylor. Chris Lindsay answered a question. Somebody said, can I play around with some of the continents that are in the Forgotten Realms? For example, Karatur, Al-Qadim, Maztica, etc. And Chris Lindsay said, yes, those are considered continents in the Forgotten Realms. So those are totally fair game. Totally fair game. So, and he went on to say that Al-Qadim is his personal favorite. So here is another Dungeon Masters Guild question. So Twitter is buzzing about the lack of artwork protection for work submitted to the Dungeon Masters Guild. It only seems as though public domain artwork is allowed, since once submitted, all of the work becomes user-created content. Remember, if you submit stuff to the Dungeon Masters Guild, you're kind of adding to the pool that people can play around with. It says, are there plans to allow for more protection for artwork in the future? And Mike Mearls said the folks behind onebookshelf.com, who they're working with for the technical aspect and how all this works, actually approached us about this exact question earlier this week. They proposed a solution to this issue that looks good, so expect a change to address this issue shortly. So, yeah, that one kind of surprised me that was a little fuzzy and nebulous. I mean, that's such a major part of creating content and contributing it and selling it, the artwork. I'm surprised that hadn't been, solidly figured out beforehand. But anyway, I'm not looking to throw punches or beat anybody up. They're like, hey, we're figuring this out. So if people are like, I'm not going to pay, somebody $100 to do a piece of artwork for my adventure and then throw it up there, and then everybody can use that artwork. If you're a little bit worried about that, then there's a solution coming. So here we have another question on the Forgotten Realms. Nicholas Kirillos, I think, asked, he said, will you publish 5th edition Eberron material? 5e is great, but the FR, Forgotten Realms, is not my cup of tea. And Mike Mearls said nothing to announce at this time. Sorry. So, again, it's Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms is the only thing open right now. So, and let's see who asked that question earlier. Oh, I didn't have who asked those other questions. So I'll try to give credit where credit is due. And then StarsFan56 on Reddit said, are you planning to let people create content in worlds other than Forgotten Realms on Dungeon Masters Guild? And Trevor from Wizards of the Coast said, right now it's Forgotten Realms, but we may open the DMs Guild up to other settings in the future, starting with focusing on the Forgotten Realms, and we'll see where all this takes us. So again, Forgotten Realms only, may open up to other stuff later. So here's another question on artwork. The Forgotten Realms and other settings and artwork came up a lot. How does art factor into the products SL and DMs Guild, specifically in relation to the community intellectual property? Most readings suggest that commission artwork would become community IP. Considering art runs upwards of $100 a pop, are we expected to pay for our own art and then just give the rights away? Who can afford to do that? This is the biggest concern I have with adoption from a content creator standpoint. And if content creators aren't putting decent art into their products, then the whole platform suffers. Agreed. Shane agrees with that. And then that was, even though that was from Mundangerous, who is part of the Total Party Thrill podcast. So Mike Mearls said, one bookshelf, the company behind the guild, is addressing exactly this issue. They should have an update shortly. So again, they're like, hey, it's coming. We've got this figured out. I'm looking forward to seeing what that solution is myself. And a couple people were asking about what art from Wizards of the Coast can we use for the DMs Guild. Lemuel14N3DM asked, will art from any other Wizards of the Coast products be made available as a resource? Could we use, say, Magic the Gathering art assets in the presentation of our homebrew material? And Chris Lindsay said, only the assets that we post in the DMs Guild for use are available. While we likely put new art up in the future, Magic art assets are extremely unlikely to be among them. Please do not use art that you either, 1, don't own or have the rights to, or 2, is not made available by Wizards on the DMs Guild. And that's an important point. There's a section on the DMs Guild for free resources, and it includes artwork and sample templates and stuff like that. So, will we see official artwork on the DMs Guild? That's from Looney Squash. Every time a new book comes out, the artists sell digital versions of their maps, and often player versions that you can't get anywhere else, on their own websites. Will these be sold on the DMs Guild now? And Chris Lindsay said, this type of content doesn't fall under the purview of the DMs Guild at this time. So once again, you can only use the artwork that's made available on the DMs Guild in the free resources. Artwork seems to be a big sticking point, so hopefully they'll get it all figured out, and it won't be the one thing that keeps this from really taking off. So Raspberry Ranid asked, when creating adventures for the Forgotten Realms, are we allowed to use anything from the printed materials, such as Forgotten Realms specific monsters, NPCs, and spells converted for 5e play? And Mike Mearls responded to that and said, yes, under the terms of the DMs Guild, you can use any Forgotten Realms reference or material that you want. Okay, that's a pretty big deal. John Upsals Gardner asked, just to clarify, does that extend to published art maps and the like? Material can be taken pretty broadly. And Mike again said, I believe art maps are not included unless we specifically release them. So again, they're really hammering that. Unless it's specifically identified as DMs Guild content, you can't use Wizards of the Coast artwork. DLI Media asked, are creatures that are considered product identity, beholders, for example, covered under this as well, even though they aren't FR specific? And Mike Mearls said, they are available for use in the guild. And I think that, and this is me talking, not Mike, I think the way to understand this, if it's in the monster manual, you can use it in the guild, because you can use the core rulebooks. So, let's see, the one and the Prime DM said, are Wizards of the Coast IP monsters like Mind Flayers, Beholders, etc. off limits for specifically DM's Guild content? Are the free art assets on the DM's free to be cropped, edited, and manipulated, and then used in a DM's Guild product? And Mike said, yes, they are part of the guild, and yes. So he's saying that all these Mind Flayers, Beholders, etc., yeah, use them in the guild. And then are the free art assets that are provided for the Dungeon Master's Guild, can you manipulate them or crop them and stuff? And Mike said yes. So can we use, and I don't have who asked this, can we use iconic Forgotten Realms characters in our work? Can we have Dritz and Elminster in our adventures? And then he also asked, pardon me, is there any plan to expand the DM's Guild model to other IP like ENWorld or Dark Sun? Mike Mearls said, yes, you can have Dritz and Elminster in your adventures. Okay, cool. I still don't quite understand that because I don't think they're in the core rulebooks in the SCAG and Out of the Abyss. And it said the novels are off limits right now. So I don't quite understand, but hey, he says we can, so why not? They're going to have some bumps come up, some legal and technical bumps, but they're going to work them out. And this is going to be a really cool program. I really, really feel that. People are excited about this. And then on the, Gamma World, Dark Sun, etc., it said that's definitely something we've talked about, but nothing to announce yet. So stay tuned. All right, Joe Bing 69. Thanks for doing this, guys. A few quick questions, hopefully quick to answer without legal. My first question, as quoted on the DM's Guild, hold on a second, let me make sure that let me summarize this really quick. Okay, I'm going to try to go with Mike's answers to this rather than reading, because this guy wrote really long questions. Okay, yes, you can convert older material. This came up more than once. You got an old first edition adventure, second edition adventure, something like that. Yeah, you convert it to 5th edition, and then you could convert it and then put it on the DM's Guild. But what they said was, try not to just do a straight copy of a previous work. Add something to it, if you really want to get attention. But more than once they said, yeah, you can convert previous adventures. Okay, within the guild, you can use any Forgotten Realms RPG product and non-setting specific RPG material. So that's interesting. So if it's not setting specific, if it's not Greyhawk, Dragonlance, something like that, then you can use it for the DM's Guild. I don't need to think about that one a little bit more. As long as it was content published and owned by Wizards of the Coast, you should be good. Let me go up and look at this question. Once again, what about using converted versions of 3.5 web enhancements, such as the Gateways column, or converted versions of non-setting specific content, such as the Dread Necromancer class from the Heroes of Horror? He's saying as long as it was content published and owned by Wizards of the Coast, you should be good. Okay, so Forgotten Realms or non-setting specific. All right. In addition, will all aspects of the realms be open to use eventually? This has already been answered, but Mike is saying areas like Maztica and the others are part of the realm, so those are good to go. An official update might be in the cards, but part of the process of deciding on that would be seeing if there's interest in them within the guild. I don't see a question here about an official update, so I don't know what he's talking about the official update. So, all right, and then people were kind of like, okay, so what do you mean by Forgotten Realms? Which is going to be a big point to understand in all this. And R. Donahue asked this, is there a clear, bright line defining what is Forgotten Realms for purposes of the DM's Guild? A lot of other products, Spelljammer, for instance, had some Realms content, and there are things like the comics, video games, and novels floating around out there. Is it all available? And does this reuse extend to art? So we've already talked about art. Okay, you can only use art that's specifically added to the DM's Guild and says it's fair game. But the other thing on what is the Forgotten Realms, Mike says a good rule of thumb, it's in play if it is an RPG product with a Forgotten Realms logo on the cover. That's way to absolutely clear. So here's an OGL question, which we will get to. I'm trying to separate out the OGL stuff. So we'll come back to that one. Basically, they're saying, hey, can I make another Pathfinder? And stay tuned for that answer. All right. Here's a question about stealing the DM's Guild content and calling it compendium. So we'll say, hey, somebody can go grab all this stuff from the DM's Guild and put it together and call it a compendium. So Jester OC asked about that. And basically said what will be done to prevent people from simply creating compendium style documents containing only the work of other people's user content. And Chris Lindsay said the fine folks at Drive Thru RPG will be on the lookout for this sort of thing. Any product that does what you're saying will be pulled down, and there may be other repercussions as well. So and then somebody else chimed in, eGamma DM, and said, hey, the rules for the DM Guild already address that. So what fonts can we use for the DM's Guild? Are we licensed to use the fonts used in official D&D products, such as the Player's Handbook and items we publish in the DM's Guild? And Chris Lindsay said, actually, no. All of the fonts we put into the sample template are usable without having to get a license. And he says we did that for a reason. I don't know what the reason is. Here's an interesting question about Kickstarter. It says, can items funded through Kickstarter be submitted to the DM's Guild? And Mike said, yes, but be sure to look at the terms of use for the DM's Guild to make sure you understand how they apply to your product. I think that's kind of a way of saying it's up to you to make sure you're legally doing this correctly. But there's nothing that says you can't Kickstart a product and then take that product and submit it to the DM's Guild. And then here we go again. DM's Guild will be a place where Wizards of the Coast is looking for new talent. But in some cases, they may buy something from an author. Okay, instead of hiring you or whatever, they may buy something from you. So I'll try to expand on that a little bit more. Chris Lindsay said, if it is discovered, okay, we've already talked about taking stuff down and people are doing compendiums. They're talking about homebrew material. By definition, homebrew material is original. If it is a derivative of someone else's intellectual property, that isn't allowed either. So they're saying homebrew is completely original. So you can post homebrew stuff. But they're saying if it's a derivative of someone else's intellectual property, that isn't allowed either. I don't quite understand that because they're also saying that if you submit to the DM's Guild, the IP kind of becomes part of the overall pool of IP. So I'm not quite understanding how they're going to have to refine some of this stuff with clearer answers, and they'll sort through it as issues come up. Okay, but yeah, Chris Lindsay says here, we are most interested in using the DM's Guild to identify hot new talent. That said, if we really like something and want to use it elsewhere, we'll be in contact with the author to purchase it outright. Okay. Logos for the Dungeon Masters Guild. Can we get an official 5th edition compatible logo, or is it the DM's Guild logo sufficient for this? And then they're talking about, can we have a logo for the OGL that would be like 5th edition compatible? And Mike Mearls said for the Guild, the logo we've included in the product template, and there's a DM's Guild logo, is what we expect folks to use within the Guild. And for the OGL, we don't plan on something like that, sorry. So they're not going to give you a compatible logo for the OGL. Updating old adventures. Several asked me anything, answers, and I just saw so many responses on this. I just summarized it. You could do 5th edition versions of older adventures provided that IP falls under the DM's Guild license. However, it was recommended you put a new spin on things rather than just copying and updating to get it, and then that way you can get attention. Okay, and then there was a question on the DM's Guild, like why 50%? Why not 30% or whatever? Why do I have to split half and half? And here's a question. It says Apple's iBookstore is at 30%. And Drive Thru RPG is at 35%, so they take significantly lower cuts of an author's sales and don't require exclusive distribution rights. What factors went into determining fair compensation to Wizards for providing this marketplace that authors may not be aware of from the outside? And I'm pretty sure Mike answered this. He said the big thing comes down to the use of Forgotten Realms which we feel has some real value. However, that percentage also allows us to fund new content for the guild, host events, and so on. We don't have anything to announce yet, but building the community is definitely part of our thinking. And that, yeah, that was Mike Mearls, I know here. Okay, and then is other DM's Guild content fair game? When I'm creating homebrew resources for the DM's Guild, is it okay if I reference other homebrew material also posted on the DM's Guild, or should everything be self-contained? All right. And let's see. Hold on. Okay, and it says, say I'm making a spellcasting class and I want it to be able to cast a homebrewed spell. What if the other homebrew I'm referencing is from a different resource, like the D&D Wiki? Okay, so Mike Mearls said you can reference material released under the DM's Guild and the materials we've made available under it, but not stuff outside of it. That's still a little, people are going to struggle with what this means. So as issues come up, I'm sure they'll have errata and clarify and all that. So if I were creating content for the DM's Guild, and I probably will, right now I would probably not reference other people's stuff they put on the DM's Guild. Not to say that it's illegal or not within the rules, but there's still kind of a how does this work? How does this work? So I personally probably would hold off right now until there's some better understanding and some precedent established on how this works. So that's the DM's Guild. Okay, you can create original content, feats, adventures, source books, whatever. I always loved this region of the Forgotten Realms. I want to write a source book about it. Whatever. You can put on the DM's Guild, and then you earn 50% of the revenue. Pretty cool. Okay, and they handle all that. You submit it to them, and they handle all the publishing and distribution and account management and all that stuff from there. They handle all that, and then you get your money, if I remember right, through PayPal. They just send it to you through PayPal. So that's the DM's Guild. Okay, now if you're ready, let's talk about the Open Gaming License and the system reference document. Okay, which is a different thing. All right, and it's, boy, I know it's hard to understand sometimes, but let me mention this again. The system reference document contains guidelines for publishing role-playing game content under the Open Gaming License, SRD and OGL, that does not use Wizards of the Coast intellectual property. You also do not publish through their site in a revenue-sharing model. Okay, it's a different thing than the DM's Guild. Now, you've probably seen, I mean, if you've ever played Pathfinder, or like I've got Castles and Crusades here, or whatever, there's a lot of products out there, especially when they did the first Open Gaming License in 3rd edition, 3.5 I think is when they did that, and you could publish content using basically the D&D engine, the rules engine, as long as you included, I don't know if you can see this here, that's actually what it is. That's the Open Gaming License legal ease. Okay, so this is the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook. So it's like, as long as you include that license in your product, somewhere in your product, and follow the rules of what you're allowed to use, then you can self-publish your own stuff using, the rules of D&D, ability checks, hit points, advantage, disadvantage, saving throws, character advancement, classes, all that stuff. Basically the engine, the game. So if I wanted to, make my own superhero game, but using the 5th edition engine, I can do that. Okay, but then I've got to publish it myself. I can't go throw it up on the DM's Guild. DM's Guild is for stuff using Wizards of the Coast intellectual property. But then you get 50%, they get 50%, you get 50%. So from the podcast, let's look at some clarification on this. So here's some stuff from the Open Gaming License that came out of the podcast. Can we publish, hold on. Okay, you cannot publish via the DM's Guild. Okay, but you can publish your own hard copy book or product or PDF or whatever. Like you could do something in the open gaming license and then put it up on Drive-Thru RPG and sell it yourself, or publish it and sell it yourself, like Castles and Crusades does here in Little Rock. They do all their own publishing. They've been using the open gaming license for, I think, like 12, 13 years or something like that. So it involves most of the 5th edition core rules, but not all. And to understand that, you have to, the system's reference document is it is the list of things that you can access. It tells you what rules you can use, you know, and you get like all the main classes, but you don't get all the subclasses, you don't get all the feats, you don't get all the backgrounds, and all that stuff. You know, so you can't, under the open gaming license, if like in the Sword Coast Adventures guide, they came up with this cool subclass for the fighter, you can't use that as part of the system reference document. They give you the main classes, and then they give you some example subclasses, and you hardly get any feats, backgrounds. You got to come up with all that stuff on your own. You basically get the skeleton, and then you have to add all your own flavor to it. Most of the 5th edition core rules are available, but not all of them. If it's not in the system's reference document, it's not fair game. Okay, and then, like I said, the systems there's links out there. Search for 5th edition systems reference document. There's a very handy website. Hold on, let me see if I still have it pulled up. Yeah, it's 5ESRD.com. So 5ESRD.com, and it has it searchable. It's by you know, it's got a table of contents. It's searchable. You can see everything in there that's fair game to use from the rules. Not the intellectual property like Dritz, the rules like how do I do to disadvantage? What's a saving throw? How do I jump? You know, that kind of stuff. The engine of the game. If it was previously in the open gaming license, it will be available in the 5th edition OGL, provided as part of 5th. So if a monster was in the 3rd edition, okay, but that monster didn't come over to the 5th edition monster manual, it's not part of the OGL, even though it was part of the 3rd edition OGL. Not all subclasses are included. Most iconic subclasses, but not entire range. I think you get like the champion for the fighter, the life domain for the cleric, but you don't get all the other stuff. You only get one example feat. Designers will need to create their own feats in OGL content. Core stuff like advantage, disadvantage included. The core engine rules are all included. Good uses, and this is, I think Mike or Chris said this, good uses are like making a superhero or espionage game or a custom take on Spelljammer, where you need the engine but have a very different take on the game. If you want to start your own publishing company, the OGL is for you. If you want to push button D&D publishing, the DM's Guild is for you. The DM's Guild is the open gaming license plus more access to D&D specific content and intellectual property. The OGL is a license for the 5th edition engine that you can build on. You will not get proper name content in the open gaming license. For example, you don't get Dritz de Werden. You will need to use DM's Guild for that kind of content. Okay, so I hope that kind of helps, you know, divide out what they are here. Now, what everybody obviously probably wants to know with the OGL, can I do Pathfinder? Because when OGL, the open gaming license, came out in 3rd edition, a lot of companies used it to put out some very cool stuff. Well, Paizo created Pathfinder, which is probably the main competitor to D&D, even though D&D is, you know, especially with 5th edition, definitely has a lot more market share, a lot more people playing it. I've never played Pathfinder. I've watched some playing of it. I liked 3rd edition, 3.5 edition D&D. I have, you know, I'm sure the rules of Pathfinder I would like. I have no idea about the setting or any of that. But it's very popular. And some people thought that, you know, Wizards of the Coast had made a mistake by releasing the open gaming license in 3rd edition. I don't think they did. I think that it has helped role-playing to grow and become even more popular. And 5th edition's success is in part based on Pathfinder, because all these people were playing role-playing games all these years, and which it can be directly traced back to the OGL. But the answer from Wizards of the Coast over and over is when people say, "Hey, can I make Pathfinder again?" Now, obviously not Pathfinder, but something like Pathfinder. Can I become the second biggest gorilla in the room? Can I do that again with this OGL, this SRD? The standard stock answer from everybody I'm seeing from Wizards of the Coast is you just have to ask a lawyer about that. They're not going anywhere near that question. My personal answer is yeah, you can. I mean, there's I don't know to the extent that Pathfinder. I'm not a lawyer. I mean, Pathfinder is basically D&D. Although a more generic names and stuff in some cases. But I'm sure lawyers have looked at all that and da. But yeah, if you wanted to create a very D&D-like game with the OGL and then try to compete with D&D, I'm sure you could. I don't think I personally would do that, but somebody. I think that legally you could. Now you can't use a beholder because a beholder is copyrighted to Wizards of the Coast. But other like dragons are in the system reference document. There's a lot of monsters in the system's reference document, stuff that's not copyrighted, I guess, or stuff that they're like, hey, we just want people to be able to play with this. So there you go. I know there's a lot of information here. I hope that helped clarify if you were curious, or if you already kind of understood things. I hope this helped a little bit. Was helpful for your time. I appreciate you watching. Remember, DM's Guild. I'm going to read this again, and we'll end on this. The DM's Guild. Where was the big summary? If you want to start your own publishing company, the OGL is for you. If you want push button D&D publishing in the Forgotten Realms, the DM's Guild is for you. So that's really the best that I can put it as well. Like I said, I'll put some helpful links in the description of this video. I really appreciate you watching. If this was helpful for you, please leave it a thumbs up and a comment on YouTube. And thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I will catch you next time on Shane Plays. If I can edit this. I hit stop, but it didn't stop. I'm going to cast the spell of